Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful as always to be together. We'll start as we always do with a question that's come in from our global family and audience who join in through the gifts of technology from online, and then open it up to any questions that any of you have. All right, we can start. We'll take yours first and then come back. He's going to give you a mic. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We're here with our group, and today we're contemplating on the question, who am I? So I would like to ask you, who are you?
Beautiful. And what a beautiful question to be pondering. There's so many ways into that. This is the key question on a path of what you could call Jnana Yoga, the path to the divine through wisdom. Equally beautiful, equally available, equally accessible, but just with different people's personalities and temperaments and times, different paths seem more powerful for us or more accessible for us at different times in our life. And so a path of love and devotion that I was talking about in the Arati, that's called Bhakti. The path of service, of action, karma yoga, such that every action becomes a way of getting closer to God. Path of Raja Yoga, path of just essentially meditation and prayer. And of course the path of Jnana Yoga, wisdom, understanding. And this inquiry of who am I is a core teaching of this Jnana Yoga path. And of course, the dilemma is, especially for those of us from the West, who have been very kind of academically indoctrinated, is we do all of our answering from our minds, from our brains. And half the time we're answering the question before the questioner even finishes asking it. Like we're already in what we're going to say before somebody even finishes. And this isn't even true only with questions. You know, you're in a conversation, somebody's saying something. And rather than actually listening and taking in what they're saying, if you watch yourself, you'll notice you're already planning what you're going to say. And you can notice that sometimes when you're having a conversation with someone and you see their lips start to move, and you realize that they're literally planning what they're going to say while you're still speaking. And of course, it's not only for those of us from the West. From what I've seen, people from Eastern traditions, especially traditional Eastern traditions, tend to be a bit more comfortable in just sitting with the question than necessarily having the answer. More comfortable in sitting in silence. Whereas we tend to just want to have a quick answer. And this is a question that actually, it's the question that's powerful, not the answer. And so if when you ask the question, you let your mind do what it always does, which is start to give answers, you actually miss the possibility of the question. It's the asking of, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And yeah, the mind will do its thing. It'll try to answer. But you just keep going. Who am I? Who am I? Until the part of the mind that thinks it's got an answer eventually becomes quiet, because it's spewed out every answer it can think of or every answer it's read or heard. But you keep asking. And eventually in that spaciousness, it creates the possibility for the experience of who you are to emerge. The tragic irony is, the minute you try to name it, it's gone. The minute you try, the mind kicks in and you start to say, oh yeah, oh this is who I am. It's gone. It's like a bubble. The minute you try to grab it, it's over. Because the thinking mind can only give you that which isn't self. So you say to me, who are you? Well, if you ask my thinking mind, it'll tell you, nice to meet you. I'm Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati. I am a 52-year-old female American monk living in India. I've been here 27 years, and I do this and I do that. And oh, that's my mom. And yeah, she had a stroke, and so she's here. And we could do this. And if we got closer and I opened up, I might say to you, and you know, when I was young, I struggled with depression and anxiety and addiction and trauma and abandonment issues. And here's the way that I suffered in my childhood. And so here are the issues that I have. And we think that this is an honest description of who we are. All we've done is describe the vehicle. The joke example I always give about this is, it's like if you're driving down the road and someone calls you and says, who are you? And you say, oh, I'm exit 51. They're going to say, no, I didn't say where are you, I said who are you? And if you say, oh, well, now I'm exit 52, they're going to think either your phone doesn't work or you've kind of lost your marbles. Because we understand that exit 51 or 52 is just where our vehicle has reached at this particular intersection of time and space. But that isn't who you are. But if I say to you, I am a 52-year-old American female monk in India, it's literally the exact same thing as saying I'm exit 51. It might say to you, I'm a 1971 model that is at exit 51. So it's just describing the vehicle. Where it was manufactured, when it was manufactured, and where it is at the current moment, where it's reached. That's not who I am. The dilemma is, the only other option to who I am, if I'm going to verbalize it to you in this sort of way, is to just throw words at you. I am soul, I am spirit, aham brahmasmi, I am one with Brahman, I am one with the supreme reality. Soham, I am that. And they're just words. Because that's what the mind can do. That's what the thinking mind can do. Now, those words are actually much more true than the first words. The dilemma is they're just words. They're not actually an experience of who I am. And so if I'm telling them to you, I would get an A+ in truth of the self, or an A+ in self-realization. But if I'm telling them to myself, they're not actually giving me that experience, they're just words. And that's where we get stuck, because we try to use the mind, the thinking mind, to understand that which is beyond mind. And so we go around and around and around and around, and we never actually get there. We describe it, but it's like reading menus or recipes out loud to each other while we die of starvation. Or reading them to ourselves while we die of starvation. They're just words on a page. They're not actually filling my stomach. They're not actually giving me any kind of nutrients. They're just words on a page. And yet, the words are very helpful if they accompany actual food. So if I know what I'm eating, great. But if I'm just reading the menu or the recipes, I'm nowhere. And this is the really interesting opportunity that this question raises, because it gives us an opportunity not only to know who we are, but to actually experience it, and therefore to go beyond the greatest obstacle we have to knowing ourselves, which is our own thinking mind. So the very muscle, organ, tool, instrument that by default we turn to understand the self is the very organ, muscle, tool, instrument that blocks us from knowing the self. And this is why in many traditions, the practices are ones that just make the mind freeze. You know, if you eat really, really, really cold ice cream and you get that kind of brain freeze thing where just for a second the whole brain just stops. There's philosophical, spiritual counterparts to that, where it's like a mind freeze. This is what Zen koans are about when they say, you know, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Or if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, what sound does it make? They're not questions that have answers. The point is not figure out the answer. The point is use the question to go beyond the mind. The mind will play with it for a while. It'll chew on it like a dog with a bone. And eventually it's going to give up because there's no place for it to go. And when the mind finally gives up, is when you have that opportunity in that spaciousness to have an experience that is beyond the mind. The other way in, same topic, but just going in from the opposite side, is the practice of neti neti, which is a beautiful meditation in which instead of saying, "Who am I?" you say what you are not. And so we begin by saying, "I am not my sorry." Okay. I know that. That's an easy one. "I am not my skin beneath the sorry." Again, I know that. My skin peels sometimes if I get sunburned. I'm sloughing off skin cells all the time. They're regenerating. But who I am is not coming and going with my skin. I'm not my skin. I'm not the blood flowing beneath my skin. We know that. We donate blood. We get blood transfusions. All of these things happen and we don't have a break in the sense of self. I'm not my muscles. I'm not my bones. We know this. It feels right inside. We understand. And you go slowly, slowly, piece by piece through the physical body, waiting to move on to the next piece until you get an inner sense of, like, yeah, I'm with you fully. And then you go on to the next. And most of us are kind of like, yeah, I'm with you fully through all of the body. We understand I'm not my kidneys, I'm not my liver, I'm not my bones, not my muscles. But then you start to say things like, I am not a neurotransmitter. I am not serotonin. I am not dopamine. I am not an electrical signal. I am not a myelin sheath on an axon of a neuron. Okay, not those things. Well, but what that means is I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my memories. I'm not my emotions, because every single thought, memory, emotion can be mapped simply by the chemicals and the electricity involved. That's all it is. There's nothing else happening in the brain. It's not like you dissect someone's brain and, oh, there's the memory. Oh, there's her depression if I could just, surgically remove it. It doesn't exist like that. It's patterns of activity, chemicals, electricity. That's all it is. There is nothing else in the brain. It's chemicals, it's electricity, and it's the actual neurons and glial cells. But there's no anxiety. There's no memory of abuse. It doesn't exist. It's all chemicals and electricity in different parts of the brain, in different loops, in different areas. So the moment we recognize, well, I'm not the chemicals and I'm not the electricity, I'm not the neurons that the electricity is running along or that's secreting the neurotransmitters, well, then I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my memories. I'm not my emotions. And you just go. And you get to the same spot, that same place where there's nothing left to say, I am not. And that's the goal, to get to that space. Because in that space, the opportunity to understand who you are emerges. But it's experiential, it's not semantic. It's not going to come to you in a paragraph with a topic sentence that you can then, post on social media of when I discovered myself. The moment you try to put words on it, you lose that experience, because then you just bring it back to the thinking mind. And all the thinking mind can do is think about something which is separate from it. It can't think about self. It can't look inward. It can only look outward. So everything the mind is going to tell you you are is going to be the outer part. So I'm very glad to know that you're doing the journey inward. Wonderful. You're in exactly the right place. Beautiful. Other questions? Yes.
advice or how can you guide someone when they've recently lost a partner?
There's no advice really to give someone who has just lost their partner, their beloved, their loved one, their soulmate. Because again, advice is in the mind. And at that moment, they're all in the heart. And that's exactly where they should be. You don't want to think about grief. You don't want to think about what you should be doing or feeling. That's the time to just feel exactly what you feel and to just allow yourself. Advice tends to be around the shoulds, what I should be doing. And so the implication with advice is that whatever you're doing is not right and you should be doing something differently. There's no right way to do grief other than not to do it and to push it away. And so I would really hesitate to try to advise someone in the early stages of grief other than simply to say, however you do this is exactly right. Because there's no right way and there's no wrong way. And don't compare yourself to how someone else grieved. Don't judge yourself. And just allow. The only thing you don't want to do is stuff it down. Because it doesn't actually go anywhere. It just festers. But you also don't want to get wrapped up in the story of the grief. Because a lot of times what happens with that is it keeps us really stuck. So for example, we lose a loved one. We're in the midst of grief. We're crying. And as we're crying, the image of the loved one comes up in our mind and we smile. Because on the deep level, they're still there. It's just the mind that can't interact with them anymore because the mind can only deal with that which I can see or hear or touch. But inside us, in the soul, we still feel them, we picture them, we feel them, we know they're here. So we picture them and we smile. And then maybe we picture them smiling at us, and then maybe we laugh a little. We remember something. But then the mind comes in and says, how dare you laugh? They are gone. They're gone. You're never going to see them again. It's over. And then, of course, we're sobbing again. That's what I mean by we don't want to get stuck in the drama of it. Allow whatever emerges just to emerge. And most people's emotions tend to be waves. And they come in waves, and there will be a wave of grief. And then it may be a wave of anger. How dare you leave me? Like, how dare you not wear your seatbelt? Or how dare you keep smoking? Or how dare you not exercise? Or depending on whatever it was that we lost them due to. Or how dare you, God, for taking this person away from me? And then we close our eyes and we see them and we smile. And the waves can come in any order, in any pattern. There's no fixed way they come. But it's the nature of emotion, is that it's very fluid. And just allow yourself to have it like that. Whatever is up for you is exactly what should be up for you. And if it's grief, if it's anger, if it's longing, if it's joy, if it's laughter, if it's whatever it may be. Just let it be there. It's exactly right. But try to keep the mind from jumping into a narrative about a drama and a story. Now you're alone. Now you don't have anybody. What's going to happen when you get old? Everybody else has somebody. You don't have anybody. If only you had remembered to tell me to buckle up. If only you had tried harder to keep me from smoking. If only. And the mind just gets into its crazy making cycle. And not only does it harm us deeply on every level, but it actually keeps us from properly grieving. Because grief is not a thinking process. It's a feeling process. And so the more I'm stuck in my mind doing its drama and its narrative, the less I'm actually grieving. Which means the less likely I'm going to actually be able to heal anytime soon. You know, it's like if you think about a physical wound. If you cut yourself and you're bleeding, and instead of actually cleaning it and putting a Band-Aid on it, or cleaning it and leaving it open to the sun, or putting coconut oil, or whatever we may do, if instead of any of those things, I just look at it and yell at it and start telling the story of how I got cut over and over again and how the universe isn't fair, it's going to get infected. It's going to get infected. The thing's going to get infected, and, you know, all sorts of untoward things happen. You got to take care of the wound. Not get lost in the story of how, why, or poor me, or oh my God, or just take care of the wound. If it hurts, cry. But try to keep the brain from doing its usual judgment, story, drama around it all. And be with God in whatever way you can, whatever way feels right to you. It may be in a place of worship. It may be in nature. It may be on the banks of Ganga, on the banks of an ocean. It may be anywhere. But give yourself the opportunity to connect with that, which is an eternal force. An eternal force. An individual wave crashes and ends, but the ocean is infinite and eternal. So allow yourself to spend some time in that. Sunrises, sunsets, the stars in the night sky, that which pulls us out of my individual story right here on planet Earth at this moment, this intersection of time and space, this scene and this act of the drama that is my life. If we can just expand a bit. So it's not the repression or suppression or denial. It's not, oh, let's go to a party or see a movie instead. But it's remembering that yes, this also, and yes, the sunrise also. And yes, the stars in the sky also. And neither undermines the other, but they coexist. And so give yourself some of those opportunities to also re-remember what else exists. Yeah? Other questions? Yes.
I know you are involved in many projects, and thank you so much. But I have a request about garbage near waterfalls, forest, and the other part of the nature, and feels a lot of pain. Maybe you can ask her to establish a day in all the meditation or yoga or healing schools had to clean with students, or what could be an effective action for this problem? Because Mother Earth asks respect, and let's see a good example of that.
Great question. So she said she knows that we are involved in a lot of projects and programs, and what to do about the trash that she sees by waterfalls, in nature, in so many different places, and what can be done. So this is an ongoing, major problem and project of not just us, but so many people. I can tell you that in the 27 years that I've been in India, it's gotten a lot better, a lot better. Just to give you some historical references. So when Pujya Swamiji first became officially president of this ashram in the early 1980s, and he put trash cans all over the ashram and hired extra sweepers. People told him he was trying to turn it into America. He had spent many years in America establishing the Hindu Jain temple in Pittsburgh and other temples abroad, and people said, "You're trying to make this America." So this is going back 40 years already. The ghat where we do arti, he built that ghat because when he first came here in the late 1960s and through the 70s, in the morning, people would go down to the banks of Ganga and go poop on the banks of Ganga. And it broke his heart, and he tried to get people to stop, and nothing worked. And he finally realized that what he needed to do was to turn the banks of Ganga into a temple, and that no one was going to poop in the morning where they pray in the evening. And so he covered it with marble, instituted the Ganga Arti, as a way to remind people to have that devotion for Mother Ganga, but also just purely practically to make sure that everybody understood this is a temple, not a toilet. We have done innumerable different projects, and I don't mean individual cleanups, but I mean major actual projects around cleanup over the last many decades. And each of them has been very successful in its own way. Here are the dilemmas that currently exist. Number one is purely a matter of infrastructure. So for example, several years ago we were doing a major cleanup over in Rishikesh at the train station, or the old train station before it got redone. Spent the whole day cleaning up, but did it in such a way that the waste was all segregated, glass and plastics and, because theoretically up in Dehradun there are different recycling possibilities, and that the municipal people who were coming to take away all of this waste were going to be taking care of it in an appropriate way. So we spent all day long bagging things up into different bags. Your waste, your compost, your glass, your plastics, okay. End of the day, we had a team, maybe 50, 80 people were there cleaning. End of the day, the trash collectors come, and before our very eyes, they pick up the bags of trash and they dump them all into the back of the truck, emptying them all, each one right on top of each other, into the back of the truck. And we all went. So there's a major issue with simple infrastructure, actual recycling plants. So you can segregate your trash cans, but there isn't actually a proper place for that segregated waste to go. So the level of infrastructure has not yet gotten to where it needs to be. It's much, much, much better than it used to be, but it still has a long way to go. Then you have issues of, okay, let's say, for example, that we do big cleanups at the waterfall, and we run them on the banks of Ganga all the time. The dilemma becomes where that trash goes. And so currently it goes into trash dumps that become like trash mountains. And then what they do is they burn it, which just creates toxic air pollution. So all you've done is you've turned ground pollution into air pollution. We are currently in talks with a good friend of mine who's a beautiful, what she calls, serial entrepreneur in America. And her latest company and their invention is mushrooms that eat waste. And I'm not going to say too much, only because I'm not exactly sure like how much of actually what they do is sort of still company secrets and how much is common knowledge. So, but the point is that there's all of this great research that mushrooms actually can eat waste. And so they're developing products around that and are going to be hopefully coming here next month or the month after to do a big test in our Rishikesh landfill to see what can be done. The other issue is education. So when we started the Clean Ganga program that we've been doing for decades and decades, the first piece, of course, was just don't throw trash in Ganga. And this is something that almost every night on very, very regular bases, we raise our arms and pledge together on the banks of Ganga in Aarti that we will not pollute the river, we will not use single-use plastics, we will not let other people pollute the river. And we get the many hundreds to many thousands of people who are joining us in the Aarti to raise their hands and take such a pledge. And not only in our Aarti, but in every big, massive event. We lead these sorts of pledges of let's raise our hands together and take a pledge. We will not pollute the rivers. We will plant trees. We will not use single-use plastic. We will be conscious citizens on planet Earth and, protect our water and etc. When we first started the Don't Pollute Ganga messaging, it was very interesting because people were really insulted. And India actually has a law that says that you are not allowed to insult anyone's religious sensibilities. And people were really insulted, and people said, that really insults me. How dare you talk about Ganga as polluted, as trash is flowing by? Because, see, Ganga is the goddess. Ganga is the mother goddess. The river is just her form. But using adjectives like dirty or polluted to describe the mother goddess is sacrilege. And you would see people would come and they'd buy flowers to offer Ganga with their love and their devotion. And then they'd offer the plastic bag that the flowers came in to her as well. Or you would go on the boat across the river and people would be doing arti to her with incense sticks, and then they would throw the box that the incense came in into the river. And it was too simplistic to say they don't care, because if they didn't care, they wouldn't be wasting their money on flowers and incense for her. So clearly they care. The dilemma was this divide between the physical form of the river and the cosmic form of the mother goddess Ganga. And we had to shift all of our messaging when we realized this. I mean, we knew obviously that there was two different things. We hadn't realized that was this obstacle. And so we shifted our messaging to talk about, I still remember, I think it was the Kumbh Mela of 2000, I think it was 1. But I mean, like, I vividly remember we were in Prayagraj in Allahabad, and a big, massive program, and it was the first time that we really had recognized this. And so we started talking and saying, Mother Ganga, the goddess, is unpollutable, untaintable, undefilable. And her form, this water she comes in, these molecules of H2O, are actually the water that your sisters and brothers living downstream drink. They are getting sick and dying. You need to keep Ganga clean for them. She is untouchable, unpollutable. But they need this water to be clean because they're getting sick and dying. And to just shift the messaging. So there's a lot of facets that are part of the problem. And the idea of education, I mean, people think Ganga is the purifier. Like Ganga has just cleaned me of lifetimes of sins. I might have been a mass murderer in a past life, and Ganga has just cleaned me of all of that. And you're telling me that a plastic bag has polluted her? Like, you are now the one who is sacrilegious, not me. And so you have to overcome that. The whole different way of understanding. So it's a lot. All I can say is that work is on, but I will also give you a little hint as you are all here. One of the things that inspires/shames other people to pick up their waste is if you bend down and pick it up. When we first started doing cleanups, we would take all of our Rishi Kumars, the young boys in yellow, on the banks of Ganga to clean up. And people were aghast that we had the young priests in training who read the Vedas picking up trash, that we had foreign guests, like Western people, picking up trash, well-to-do people, rich people, professional people picking up trash. Nobody could believe it. And we kept doing it, and slowly other people joined. I remember when we went out on pilgrimage to Gomukh, the glacier that's the source of Mother Ganga. It's an 18-kilometer trek out from Gangotri to the glacier. And on our way in, we had noticed a lot of trash on the ground. So on our way out, we did a huge trash cleanup. And at first, all of the coolies, the Sherpas, and the guys with the ponies, they couldn't believe it. They just stood around, eyes wide, jaw dropped to the ground, watching our yellow-clad priests in training and well-to-do professional foreign guests bending down and picking up trash. But slowly, 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 they all started joining in. Because see, that's the other dilemma in this country, is that cleaning trash, sweeping the street is still seen as a very low-level thing to do. I will dump it, somebody else will clean it. And so when you can shift that narrative for them, when you can bend down and pick up trash, when Pujya Swamiji bends down and picks up trash, it scrambles people's brains and their understanding. And a lot of times it scrambles it enough and shakes it up enough that they actually start bending down and picking up trash too. And the minute that people start actually picking up trash is the minute they stop dumping trash and they stop thinking it's okay to dump trash. Because now you've changed what they see. Instead of just walking by it and seeing it as someone else's job, they see it as something that Pujya Swamiji could be picking up. Like, oh my God. And so then they get inspired and pick it up. So my suggestion to you, if you really want to effect more mass movement, is the more people who see you guys picking up trash, the bigger of an impact you're going to have on how other people see trash. Yeah, it's a group effort. And anybody with any kind of trash technology, we are always open and very excited about innovative ways of getting rid of trash. Yes, last question.
Thank you very much for that exciting, great answer. My question is about limitation for technologies and probably relying on some ancient wisdom, because we had 12 years ago in Mexican Gulf, we had bacteria Cynthia, which had been invented to clean the oil from the Mexican Bay. But unfortunately, in a few years, it been discovered that it actually started eating and killing people and the animals and birds. So sometimes maybe we clean our bodies from mushrooms, and it feels a little, very dangerous to use. Would this mushroom, could it become a weapon against us rather than cure for the trash? Maybe the change in the mind, which you actually do, and spreading this wisdom is the safe way rather than improving it.
Beautiful. So the side effects and downsides of different innovations, and this is always the problem when you're trying to treat a problem rather than prevent a problem. We see it in medicine all the time. Oh, you've got high cholesterol, now you have to take this medicine for it, but this medicine is going to have a whole bunch of other side effects. Obviously, it's a much better system to prevent having high cholesterol in the first place, so that you don't end up having to have some kind of innovative medicine that inevitably is going to have some other negative ramification. With regard to trash, though, I think it's got to be a two-pronged approach. Yes, we need the spread of this wisdom to prevent more trash from accumulating. Yes, we need people to start carrying their own water bottles, carrying bags with them wherever they go so they don't have to get plastic bags. And these are the sorts of things that we talk about all the time. Yes, we need to be planting trees. Yes, we need to be consuming less. Yes, and yes, and yes to all of that. And yet, we have mountains of trash that currently exist that are not by any natural means going to disappear for any time in the next many, many hundreds of years. And so we have no choice but to turn to innovation. But we turn to innovations that we hope will be the most eco-friendly, the safest. So for example, for a lot of people, incinerating is the best solution to trash. I don't think so. It just gives you air pollution. The technology around mushrooms doesn't worry me. I can't see in anything other than some really kind of fun science fiction horror movie. I couldn't see it turning against us in some way. And I believe it moves slowly enough and happens slowly enough that if it did turn out that there was some kind of unforeseen consequence, that they would be able to stop it in time. But it would make kind of a fun science fiction horror movie of, the mushrooms from the trash dump that kind of ended up, taking over the town. But I think you raise a really important issue, which is so much of our energy is spent on fixing problems once they exist, whereas our ancient wisdom really gives us the teachings of how to prevent it. If we lived according to Ayurveda, we would not need these medicines. If we lived according to spiritual precepts, not Hindu precepts, precepts of all religions. I mean, if you look at the teachings of the mystics, the prophets, the leaders of all of the religions, the real enlightened, beautiful, embodied masters, they're all talking the same thing. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Like, it's not about what you acquire and earn, it's about what you give. I mean, there's so many beautiful teachings in all of our religions about that. So if we live by these teachings, and if you don't subscribe to organized religion, that's fine. Look at our indigenous wisdom traditions, again, across the world. They're all about living in harmony with the earth, with ourselves, with each other. So absolutely, along with some innovation to get us out of the mess we're in, we absolutely need to be focusing on that wisdom and living that wisdom. I mean, would I prefer that the richest people in the world spent their money fixing Earth than trying to figure out how to live on Mars? Yes, of course. Because, all right, that might be an interesting sounding innovation, but I agree with you. Wouldn't it make so much more sense to go back to what we have and take care of that and protect that and use our wisdom, use our abilities, use our technologies to protect what we have rather than always trying to create something new, bigger, better out there that's going to somehow fix the problem here. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings. And I look so forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. And have a beautiful, beautiful night, and so much love to you.